Hello, and welcome to the Ordinary Men Who Fight Like Heroes podcast. This is Drunks and Dragons, presiding in place of Chris Fearing, and joining me at the table is...
Aaron Bass.
And we are currently without our third party member, so to speak. That's just fine. Got an interesting topic for today. It's called I Am Drawing a Complete Fucking Blank. Aaron, say something to me, and then I'll just I'll just agree. And go,
There are a lot of owls in this room currently.
There's no context for that. People are just gonna imagine we're in an owlery or some shit, or at the fucking place at Hogwarts where Hedwig sleeps.
That's where we are. That's where we are for this podcast.
That's where we are. We're in Hogwarts.
We
are
just
broadcasting
got
to you
notes.
live
Hagrid
from...
came to our houses and said we're wizards.
We're broadcasting to you live from Hogwarts, and I know what you're thinking. But drunks, that's impossible. Electronic devices don't work, and I'm telling you, shh, it's magic.
Yes.
The Gathering.
The Gathering.
Magic, the Gathering.
The Gathering.
That's what we've done. We've just taken over the podcast just so we can talk more about magic, because Chris doesn't know anything about magic, and then he can't stop us from talking about.
And he's taking a dump right now, so he doesn't know that we're podcasting.
that second part is also all of that is also true. Gosh though, Magic is a fun game though.
Yeah, Magic is a fun game.
I do enjoy that. Because you bring your deck over all the time, and we never actually get a chance to play because we do podcasts and other stuff. And you got your weird ass. This is your artifact deck, right?
Yeah.
Generator Savage. M15's art style is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
The way the cards look in comparison to the old cards. You know, the evolution of card games like Magic the Gathering. It's pretty interesting to look back on them and look at all the different mechanics they used to have, and there's very few card games that actually have the kind of staying power that Magic does.
Yeah.
Yu-Gi-Oh's been around for a while, sure, but it
doesn't have as much of a
It
following.
feels like it's really bumpy, too. I hear there's a lot of power creep.
Yeah, I imagine so. And Magic is continuously growing. I think for the past 2 or 3 sets, it's been this is our biggest set ever. And then it's this year, this is our biggest set ever. And the next year it'll probably be, this is our biggest set ever. Yeah.
You know, that actually makes you kind of think of a different thing altogether. Not just with Magic, but with the evolution of games in general. There's a constant, much like this channel, want to provide content for a base of people who are the consumers. Whether they be people who buy or people who just listen for free because they're bored as fuck. So, you know, it comes to a point to where it's man, when is there just too much content flying around? Or when does the content stop being meaningful?
That's a good
Because you've got some game franchises, there was one magical day a while ago, Ubisoft said, someone from Ubisoft said in an interview that they're not interested in pursuing any new intellectual properties, i.e. any new ideas for games, that they can't turn into a franchise. Meaning, they would only be making games that they could sell you more than 3 of, or 1 a year, every year, until it stops making money. And it's just the production is so quick on these games, I feel like it's you got kids in sweatshops, rendering out, cutscenes? What's going on here?
Yeah.
And Destiny 2 is in production.
Yeah.
And Destiny 1 hasn't even had its first thing of DLC, as far as I know.
Yeah, they probably had day 1 DLC or something.
They probably. I wouldn't even be surprised if they did. But, it comes to a point where, it's just, is it not enough? Are we as consumers and us as gamers, I say us as gamers, but people who identify themselves as people who are interested in games. Do you have a giant gaping hole in your soul that needs to constantly be filled with new games every fucking 2 years? every year, every month?
I think Ubisoft has a giant gaping hole in its bank account it needs filling every 2 years or something like that.
Yeah, right. They make a lot of money.
Well, they think they need it. As a business, you have to make more money, and you have to make more money than you made last year, or else you suck.
God. No one can just settle for almost being able to buy the world rich. Everyone has to buy the universe rich.
Yeah.
Oh well, what can you do? Yeah, man. I just wish some of the major game companies would like take some time in between like releasing releasing new releases, putting out new releases in their popular franchises, so they could take time to like do meaningful work and pay proper kind of like proper tribute, if you will. You know, like do those franchises, do those intellectual properties justice.
Yeah.
Rather than just going, we could have a decent Assassin's Creed out by next year, or we can have a fucking phenomenal Assassin's Creed out that people will put in their top 10 lists for the next 20 years. We can have that in 4.
Yeah.
I would be like, yo guys, let's take the 4 years to do that. Let's take a few more years to not make as much money, but be legendary, than like produce it like tomorrow and just make our money.
And you compare that to, like, say, the movie industry, where, you know, Christopher Nolan can take however long he needs to do from Dark Knight to Dark Knight Rises, where, you know, at least the studio is letting him take it the speed that he needs to do the production for it. But we don't have like powerful singular voices driving like when new games are coming out, or at least they don't have as much say. I mean,
yeah,
I can't think of too many singular developers running studios that, you know,
in that manner.
Yeah, in that manner.
Well, a lot of the powerful voices when it comes to like the release or the final decisions on a game is usually some kind of director who's like proved his worth to the point of no return or whatever.
Yeah.
Like
and then they move on to the point where they don't even develop the games anymore.
Yeah, I was gonna say like Hideo Kojima or whatever.
Yeah, like he's
like
head of Konami.
Yeah.
And he can say, you know, he gets to develop what he wants and choose what other things get
Yeah,
developed.
but he had to like get there.
Yeah.
Or like the guy that made Minecraft. But like when you start at the bottom, you work with what you have and you try to do the best you can, then that gets you the recognition so that you'll have the power to have the say-so, so you don't have any of those constraints. And it may be that some of those constraints are actually better. I've actually heard stories here and there of game developers leaving big companies to go work for smaller companies to give themselves limitations so that they can continue to rod at the creativity that they used when developing the games that made them super big so that they wouldn't have to go anywhere.
Wow.
They're actually dropping back down to level 1 to like pro challenge, like back up again, like resetting themselves.
Yeah, I got you.
And it's kind of like, man, can you imagine if maybe some of our movie directors did that? Like, let's go back to square one, so we have to think of a different way of doing things.
I think you hear some filmmakers say that, and they do like more grounded, quote unquote, movies. But you know that I don't know if they go to that level. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I think Irrational Games did that recently, didn't they? Like they downsized their company a huge amount, and everybody was like, "Oh no, is Irrational okay?" And then they were like, "No, we're just doing that because that's what we're normally working with, and we're not a bloated, big, huge company. We're a group of small, creative people."
Yeah, and I think is it okay if I look at this?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I played it the one time. I'm rifling through this Magic deck while we talk about the few like game developers' decisions to have limits. And you know, there's lots of games will always need, movies, whatever creative projects will need some kind of limits, and the limits are some kind of good to adhere to, because when you have something that's like super, it's weird. It's like when there's a point of too limitless.
Yeah.
If you will. Like, if something is too limitless, it becomes odd and bloated, and then people will just piecemeal the hell out of it if they possibly can. Like Magic the Gathering. There's a million different cards. You told me how many cards there were. It's like
at least around 10,000.
They were different cards.
Yeah.
It's around 10,000 different cards. Not all of them see play. Some of them are actually quite good. Some of them are actually quite bad. Statistically, rules-wise speaking, anyway. Some of them are neat, just in their own right. But you know, but when you have like, if those options were to all still be in the game, that would be silly.
Oh yeah.
But you know, when you have...
That's why Legacy is silly. Vintage is crazy, ridiculous, you know.
Yeah, but when you have like, when you have certain limitations, it forces you to be creative. And it's nice. That's why I like, when it comes to tabletop role-playing games, the early to mid-range levels.
Yeah.
So like, I can still challenge the party with things like travel time and rations and safe places to rest and particular kinds of monsters. I don't need to worry about like whole kinds of challenges being rubbed out because one guy can fly over it.
Yeah, or teleport.
Or teleport away. Or, oh, don't need to do this. Like, it doesn't... It's almost like a higher level character in a tabletop role-playing game is like a lazier character. Because it's like,
yeah.
I don't need to reload, I don't need to buy arrows when I'm in town because my quiver magically makes them. I don't need to aim because my bow does it for me. I don't need to, like, shake hands with the king and get the job. I'll just go do it and then I'll just walk off with all the gold or something. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah.
It's kooky. It is kooky indeed.
Yeah, there's just a point where it just gets silly. And it's difficult to give your players enough where, you know, they feel satisfied, but then also you can still challenge them, or, you know, they can't just, you know...
Or I would hope that, like, pursuing some avenues would cut off others, so it would encourage kind of, like, retackling it from the beginning, so you can have a different kind of experience. That's why Skyrim is a really fun game, but it gets weird after a while, because you can just do everything you want and become everything, and then no one actually really knows or seems to care. But, like, you can do it all with the same character, so there's almost no reason to start again. Almost.
Yeah.
With the exception of maybe how you built your guy, but you can almost still do anything anyway, so it's like really weird.
Yeah.
Also, if you level up enchantments, you can do everything, because enchanting just makes everything you do better, so then you're just good at everything, according to my brother anyway.
Yeah, no, that sounds about right.
That's why I like playing, I like testing myself when in a new playthrough of Dark Souls, because it's like, it's not New Game Plus, it's a new playthrough. It has all the same parameters as when I first did it.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
But now I'm trying to go for something else, so I'm limited because I've chosen to do certain things.
Yeah. In New Game Plus, you have, like, all those weapons or all those abilities that you used to have.
Another good example is, like, the difference between, like, you look at, like, Diablo 3 and Diablo 1. In Diablo 3, you have all these different powers. You can change up as you level up or whatever. You can change how you completely fight or whatnot. Then you look at Diablo 1. You want to cast spells. You got to find them in the dungeon. You have to have a high enough magic score. You have to read the books. You can continue to find the same spells again and read them and have a better version of the spell. Like a better or a more powerful version, even if it does, like, the same thing and looks the same.
Yeah.
But, like, you know, you're more limited and you have to definitely explore and crawl and scrounge for the stuff that you get. Both experiences are very different, but I think that there's one of those, or at least to me anyway, there's one of those that is certainly more engaging because it's much more challenging and you definitely have to, like, really think about where you're going to go and what you're going to do next.
Oh, yeah.
It's good. It's good. Speaking of these games, in the future, it is the hope to do some kind of let's plays, if you will, of board games and other games that we have at our disposal that are fun and kooky. Some you probably heard of, some you haven't. I've talked about it before on this podcast before. I've talked about it and I've talked about it, but it's coming. I'm serious, you guys. Like this time,
For real this time.
For reals. For reals and for serious. For reals and for serious, you can do this. It's games.
Games are in the future.
You know, we'll probably end up doing a podcast even at some point where we get to, like, play a game of Magic, and then you get to see what a vaguely what it's like for a game of Magic between.
You can see our decks.
Oh my gosh, so much editing on Chris's part. We might have to just take pictures and he just, like, hold them up once our turns or something. So
Well,
it's
you
easier.
can probably just put the deck lists on the page or something.
Yeah,
like
put the
that.
deck list in the description below.
Yeah.
You could play, like, your artifacts deck versus, like, my phylactery lich deck.
Oh boy.
Or some kookiness like that, and people are like, what is happening? Or you should try and pick the weirdest deck you have.
True. Yeah.
Like, the one where it's like, this is made up with the oldest cards, this is the wackiest. I don't know. It'll be fun. It'll be fun. That'll happen too at some point, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
So this is kind of like a plug for, don't worry, the games are coming.
Yes.
Your punishment will be more severe. It will be. It will be. Gosh, but you know, I feel that, like, games that have limitations,
So
while being limitless, are still good.
So if games that have limitations are something you prefer, would you say you prefer 5th edition to Pathfinder? Since 5th edition is a little bit more limited, there's less resources overall, just because it's a newer game system. and
Okay.
it's a revamp.
Okay, so you got two different these two different editions of bleh. You have these two different editions of Dungeons and Dragons, 5th edition and Pathfinder. Even though Pathfinder's not technically that's going to be a story time in and of itself. That's a story time in and of itself to explain Pathfinder, but for the basic audience member, all you need to know is it's the same thing. So it's weird. 5th edition has very nice rules, and for beginners, I'd say it's like perfect, nigh on perfect, because it's got very simple, easy rules. All of the character classes have their own unique abilities, as well as unique choices within themselves. The 3 choices of background, race, and character class allow for a very customized character, and as far as I feel limited by the first book even more so, because there's just like only but so many options per character class, and I'm used to other editions of Dungeons and Dragons and other RPGs where I've got more books, so I have more options. So going backwards is not something that I want to do, but I do appreciate the system and all of its options, and I see in the future, I like playing 5th edition because it's like, this is kind of neat, though it feels limited, but on the other hand, I also know that I'm at the beginning, because they've just only, at this point in the game, this stage in time, only really released for players the first player's handbook. I can see that in the future, when more books are released, they will have more backgrounds, more character classes, and more archetypes and options that fit within the existing character classes themselves.
So it might just get a lot crazier.
So it will get a lot crazier at some point, later on.
Yeah.
But it's got a lot of potential for growth, but there's still like the different parameters, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Pathfinder's very... Oh shit, he's coming back. Shit. Okay, and remember folks, this never happened.
Yes.
And we'll meet you guys later in the next podcast. Bye.
Don't tell him.